Let's look at how we can Dockerize our Next.js web application that we have on GitHub and push the Docker container image to GitHub packages. So we have our Next.js web application. We already have a workflow that builds the application and creates a GitHub release. All of that works fine. But we want to now modernize this by using Docker. So I have a Docker file here. It starts from node alpine, creates a working directory called app, and copies all the current files into the app directory. It then runs npm install and then npm run build, exposes port 80, and then when that Docker container image starts, it runs npm run start. Super simple. Let's test it out. So Docker build tag, and I'm going to just call this next. I'm going to build the current folder. So it's pulling down node alpine. It's going to copy the files after it's done pulling that down. Then once it copies the files, it'll run npm install, npm run build, expose port 80, and then it'll set the start command for the Docker container image, which is npm run start. So there we go. We're copying files in. We set our working directory. Shouldn't take too much longer to do this. And it's copying everything here. If you want to speed it up, you could exclude some of the folders like node modules and stuff like that. But for purposes of demo, I'm not going to do that. So it's running npm install, npm run build. There's our optimized production build. Also export. There's our export. And we now have our container image. Took about a minute, 20 seconds to build. Clear our screen. Let's test that container image. So Docker run, we're going to run it detached. We're going to publish to port 5000 from port 80, the next container image. That just, we don't have any port conflicts. So if I did this correctly, I should be able to go HTTP localhost 5000, and it's running my web application, and everything is running just fine. Perfect. So we have a working Docker file that runs a working Docker container image. Now let's look at how we can automate this using GitHub workflows and GitHub actions. So our automation YAML file, we're going to make this super simple. So we're going to call this name Dockerize Next.js web application on push jobs. And for our job, we're going to create a really simple job called build container. Name build Docker container image. Runs on Ubuntu latest. Steps. Super simple first step. Check out our code. Actions checkout at v2. So nothing changes here. Now from here, we like to push our code to GitHub packages. So we can actually go and look for, using the github.com/marketplace, any Docker actions that are interesting to us. So if I search for Docker, we see there's quite a few. Build and push Docker images seem to be a really popular one. The current version is v2, but they also have v1 that's available to us. And you know what? I like it, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to do Docker build push action v2 or v1. So for this, I'm going to just keep it simple. I'm going to do build push action v1. So we will go in. We'll say name publish to GitHub packages uses Docker build push action v1. Now, the cool thing is there's a v2. So when we use this, it's going to actually fuss at us. It's going to say, don't you want to use the latest version? But it's going to work just fine. It's just going to remind us that there is a later version if we want to do that. So our username is going to be the current context that we're running in. That's github.actor. Our password is going to be just like we do with other workflows. We're going to go grab from secrets, GitHub token. So this is going to give us username password to log in to the Docker container registry for GitHub, which is docker.pkg.github.com. And then we need a repository. So this is where we normally would put our repository information. So it'd be like, for me, it would be C# run example next web app / and whatever I want to call this container image. I'm going to just call it next. Now there's a problem with this. The problem being that if somebody else wanted to use this, this is going to break because this isn't going to be the name of their repository. So whenever I can avoid hard coding stuff, I'm going to do that. So instead of hard coding my repository name and organization in, I'm going to continue to use that GitHub context. But instead of GitHub.actor, I'm going to do GitHub.repository, which will give me that fully qualified repository name. And that way this is just pretty portable. Now I need to give it a tag. I'm going to always tag it latest, but I also want to tag it using the GitHub run number. That way we have multiple tags. We have historical container images every time we publish to GitHub packages. So let's give this a shot. Push to GitHub packages. Going to commit this and push it. Barring any typos, I should be able to just go over to actions. There's push to GitHub packages. Waiting for an agent to open up for this job. There we go. Has an agent. It's pulling that Docker GitHub actions. It's checking out my code. And this one step Docker build push action step is going to not only build my Docker container image, but it's going to push it to GitHub packages. This kind of does all at once, as opposed to having to do 3 or 4 different steps. So here we go. It's building my container image. It's already up to the npm install. It's much faster on the side, and that's because it's not pulling in that node modules folder like I did. All right, npm install is almost done. Then it's going to run the build step, which is step 5 in the Docker file here. Fun fact, we already know the build takes about 80 seconds, so we have a frame of reference for how long this build should take. Here we go, npm run build. There we go, static site, it's done, export successful, expose port 80, and we set the default command. Perfect. Now it's actually uploading or pushing this container image from the agent to GitHub packages. So once this is successful, we should be able to just jump over. It looks like it's almost done. So I should just be able to jump over from here to my repo landing page and see there's my next package. Go to packages, next, and there it goes. We can see that we're on version 5, which is the latest version. We see all sorts of stuff there. There's 5 and latest. Those are the 2 tags that we have. If we ran this build again, we'd have a 6 and latest, and 5 would still be around for historical purposes.